What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of MOTIV8 UNPLUGGed.
We're back.
What's up, y'all?
Hi.
The gang is back, and so we're so excited. I'm protecting my eyes from the corona. Anyway, so we're so excited to be here. We're talking.
Oh my gosh.
Yo, all right.
Are you really going to wear these shades the whole episode?
I'm trying to stay
Absolutely
protected.
do that. Absolutely do that.
Anyway, yeah.
This
So,
is from the
speaking of
guy who
protected-
wears their hood the whole time.
He wears his hoodie every episode.
but he's wearing a hood with a hat. Like, I don't understand. That's America. I don't understand. Yeah.
Huh?
Hey, Gabe, zoom in on yourself.
Hello.
All right, great. Hey, listen.
Organic.
No, listen. So the gang is back. We're talking about something today that is a very strong subject in ministry.
I'm not starting already.
And before we get started, if you are watching by YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so every time a video comes up, you're able to see it. If you're listening by the podcast, make sure you subscribe. Go to IG, follow the page. Do what you need to do so that every time MOTIV8 has an episode, an infomercial, whatever we have, you can make sure that you see it. So today, we are talking about a very a very strong subject, and I think it is shunned upon in church.
Shunned upon.
But
That's native tongue.
Shunned upon.
Shunned upon.
But I think it's shunned upon in church. But today we're going to talk about sex.
Okay,
And
get to it.
yeah,
That's
now,
the problem. Too many people doing that.
I was I will say
I'm
that,
starting off
it's
break.
It's
This
y'all's funeral.
This is gonna.
Oh my! The sex of the episode.
Oh my, that was good. I would say that for those of you who are listening to this episode, from this point on, you're gonna have to be very mature to really digest this episode. And
on,
so,
man.
no, I'm just saying in the sense that because people talk about sex. I don't know. People are afraid to talk about sex in church, like they're not having sex,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that like people they're saying all this stuff like they're not doing it.
Can we pause?
Yeah.
Why does he still have these glasses on?
He's gonna keep them on.
You're going to really keep these on the whole episode.
You're gonna talk about him keeping these glasses on, but we need to talk about you not cutting up this whole episode because
Yeah.
you already started.
Y'all might as well edit me out and put my picture up again.
Lord, pray for me.
That's got to be highlights.
So, yeah, what about it? Like, why do y'all think people don't want to talk about it in church?
Because they don't know how to do it
Because they don't know how to do it. It doesn't
properly.
take. Okay. No.
Some of the most of the people, let's go back to the original conversation of this with church. We're going back to the Catholic Church,
Are we?
which really kind of like set
I'm not
this
Catholic.
off. I know you're not Catholic. Help me, Lord. Priests can't have sex. Well, they shouldn't be. That's another episode.
They need to let them have it.
Somebody else take this conversation because this is horrible. We're starting off
Okay.
bad.
Wait, no.
So why do you believe this? Patience, why do you believe it's? We're going to ignore them for a second. Patience, why do you believe that sex is shunned upon to
I'm
be
so
talked about?
scared about what I'm going to say.
Okay, this was
Lose
another.
yourself.
Okay, this was another listener requested topic.
Oh, yeah,
guys.
let's make sure we
That
say
is
that.
why we are getting into this. This is a listener requested
It needs
topic.
to be talked about.
It does.
Because it really does need to be talked about. But one of the reasons it's shunned about in church is because when you look at history, we were taught, our parents, our grandparents, great-great-grandparents, don't have sex.
Sex is bad.
Sex is bad.
Yeah.
Well, they necessarily didn't say sex is bad, but because of the way that we were taught, we automatically viewed it through that perception and through that lens that it's bad. You're automatically going to get pregnant.
You're gonna
Don't
die.
bring no baby home. You know, that whole connotation behind it. So for those, if you had premarital sex early, there was a fear attached to the act. And so because of that fear, it's always shunned with talking about in church, not only because it's not taught properly biblically, but because parents don't know how to teach it properly. That's the reason why it's shunned upon to me.
I feel like the church leaders who teach about sex either teach too much or not enough. There's not like a just teaching on it. It's like you get some of the preachers who like are in love with sex, and it seems like every sermon series they talk about has to do with sex. And then you get some churches who've never even brought the
Who them
conversation up.
preachers?
Oh, we're not going to bring that up. They're no longer preaching. We're not going to talk about that.
I'm
but
gonna say he's doing good.
I'm trying. I'm trying to hold on here.
Please, just go.
I really am.
Yeah, so some don't talk about it, okay?
Then you get the churches who, like I said, it's like the elephant. Well, it's the elephant in the room. It's like, yes, the kids and the teenagers, the adults are having it, but it's like whenever it's brought up, it's like, hush, don't say nothing. Let's keep moving on. But so-and-so overdoses on drugs, and it's talked about, they'll do a whole sermon series on opioid addiction or, overdosing. But it's like, you've had 20 girls get pregnant in your church. You don't think it's a good time to talk about sex?
I agree. I just think taking it from a leader standpoint, we have to show that it's a positive thing when it's done. I think if we showed more of the positive things about it in marriage versus trying to condemn it right off bat, I think we would, benefit from that as a kingdom, as a whole.
I mean, it's common sense. Whenever you tell a kid whenever you tell a kid not to do something, they're going to attempt to do it majority of the time.
Yeah.
You tell someone, I can tell you right, we'll tell our kids, don't climb on that. You're going to fall and bust your head.
Let me ask y'all something, because y'all a married couple. Everyone in this room, beyond my holiness, has had sex, because obviously I'm a virgin, according to my mom. So,
Thank you for your honesty, Gabriel.
Let's go.
Thank you for joining us for this episode.
Mom, if you're watching, Mom, we love you.
So what are your thoughts?
Did you say you're a virgin?
Huh?
According to your mom?
Let him keep going. Go ahead. I'm talking. Keep talking.
What are your guys' thoughts on obviously the church has to preach save yourself until marriage.
That's the word.
Because it's the word.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I want to get into the practicality of it, where let's say you save yourself,
Glasses have come off.
you get married,
Oh, I love this.
and then the sex is trash.
Ooh, let's go there.
How do you feel about that?
Okay,
Who's gonna go
so
first?
And what if it's a deal breaker? Like intimacy is something that obviously I believe is a cornerstone of a marriage.
I'm not gonna do it.
see, this is
I
hard.
love his smile, but I hate his stroke.
And I'm
That's one for you.
I'm gonna sign off a few times this episode to let you guys know.
Can you imagine that conversation? Oh
But,
my God.
I'm gonna tell you this, and this comment's gonna get me in a lot of trouble.
This is 18 plus.
But this is hard for me because my views as a pastor is because I have to defend the faith.
Okay.
But my view as Corey is a little clouded in a sense.
And that's
so
what I'm saying.
I'll say as a pastor, in order to protect the integrity of my church, it is possible. It is very much so. It is possible to save yourself for marriage.
Absolutely.
Absolutely
It's definitely possible.
It is very much so possible. It takes willpower.
Oh, for sure.
It takes willpower. It takes discipline.
Take Jesus.
More than I
No,
got.
for real. It takes seriously. It takes willpower. It takes discipline to save yourself from
And
marriage.
boundaries.
For sure.
For real. And there are people I know who are still who are like 40 and they're like a virgin. I'm like, wow. I think
I have
Some of
several
them-
friends. I have
That-
several
And
friends who
that's
are still
crazy.
virgins.
And that's
That's
real though.
amazing.
That's crazy because the amount of discipline that you need for that is crazy.
Some of them are not by choice.
Well,
Moving
there
on.
are some
We pray
people
for them.
who are still. I told you I'm
I
signing off a
don't.
few
You
times.
don't.
It's
I'll
possible.
cut up.
It's possible. Some
It
people-
is possible, though.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
definitely
it's
possible.
because some people aren't options. I understand. And I respect it.
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, to answer your question, what do you do when you save yourself from marriage and you get there and you don't like your partner? Saying the sex is trash is a little harsh. So
It's real though.
It's
so
garbage.
you don't
Oh.
like the sexual experience with your partner.
5 pumps and it's done.
Oh my God.
Well, if he's been saving himself, that is
Thank you.
that's
Right, that's
expected.
expected.
So for me to answer that question, I would say that you have unrealistic expectations about your sexual life when you first get into the marriage. If you've been saving yourself, if both parties have been saving themselves for this marital union, and you consummate your marriage on that night, and he came, oh Lord Jesus, and he finished in a minute, 3 minutes, one and done. It's over.
Give him another try.
Right.
Give him another try.
No, for real,
You have to,
seriously, you gotta understand.
It's real, though.
But being realistic, a lot of this comes from, and I'm glad you brought this question up
They
because
got pills for it too. I'm gonna put that in there.
But you don't need to do that.
but you
though.
help
usually
y'all
hear
out.
this complaint from women, and women a lot of times you get into this getting divorced over a sexual life because you were not able to communicate in an effective way.
Communicate, right.
You have to be able to communicate. If you are saving yourself and you get married and find out this is not what I thought. We talked about it on the marriage episode. Most people get a revelation after they get married that marriage is not what I thought it was going to
Great
be.
episode, by the way, guys.
Point blank period. Thank you,
Real,
Prophet.
yeah, of course. I
So,
said
no,
it myself.
it was really,
wonderful.
really good. In the
I
DQ.
actually heard the whole thing. Yep.
Shouldn't you be listening to the whole thing? You edit it.
Oh wow, look at you.
Do you listen when you edit?
But
No.
He's on autopilot. But you getting back to this, you have to have realistic expectations and you have to communicate. Point blank period.
No, I mean it's true. You do have to
agree.
communicate. So I mean, I can only echo what Patience is saying. The only way, if you don't like that with your partner, you have to tell them. You know what I'm saying? Like people communicate about money. You communicate when your partner makes you mad, but you don't communicate when you're not sexually pleased. Now the problem is, if we're going to be honest, I think that's harder for women because if you tell a man that you're not pleased, it will almost kill his ego.
Oh, it would destroy someone.
It would destroy a man's ego. And so that's, I'm just like,
You don't do it like Tyrone used to
yeah,
do
like,
it.
oh.
He gonna kill you.
We're talking
But
about
she-
two virgins here.
but she
We're
never
talking about two
experienced Tyrone.
virgins. Right.
But that goes back into what's being taught.
And that's what I was about to say.
Right.
You have to, that's why it needs to be taught in church. Because if it's taught in church, she's going to have somebody she can go to and be like, okay, this is not, because I know in my circle of friends, we can go to each other and talk to each other. I have friends who don't agree with doing certain things in the bedroom. Oh my gosh.
welcome to the group chat.
That was good. Next level.
Gabe, you on it?
He alive in this conversation. Yes, he is.
We're getting back to the point of teaching it and understanding about sex and being able to communicate with your partner.
Yeah.
There are ways you have to be able to do it in love.
Yes.
And point blank period. It's just like anything else in your marriage. You're still learning each other.
Yeah.
Why is sex any different?
Because people don't want their feelings hurt. And it's a real conversation that needs to be had. And when people say it needs to be talked about in church, I don't believe that all the details should be expressed congregation-wise. There should be some separate group situations to where the men can talk to the men about sex, to the young men. The women can talk. I mean, that's scripture. Let the young men be taught about it. It goes all the way back to scripture. But a lot of people are uncomfortable with what they don't understand. And some people are self-conscious about sex, so they don't want anyone else to talk about it because they question their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes though, even with what Gabe had said, is that sometimes that miscommunication comes from the example. And so this is probably a little touchy, which is okay. I think the problem is a lot of people sometimes trying to compare their sexual experience to almost like pornography. And that's honest, got true.
And that's huge.
That's big.
like for real.
It's
So,
huge.
so,
The
so
pornography epidemic is
right,
huge.
Especially among ministers and pastors
Yes.
in
Major.
the church.
And
whole-
look,
that whole fantasy there.
even if you are a virgin, I guess, and like let's say both of you are virgins,
right.
at some point or another, you have seen pornography.
Yep. Whether it's soft
Time out,
porn or
time
whatever.
out.
At
yeah.
some point or another, you may have also masturbated.
But I think
The romantic movies get close enough to it, even if you haven't looked at actual pornography.
Right.
Yeah,
The
but
movies
that's
are
true.
enough.
I feel like a
It's
lot
soft
of,
porn.
but if you get into the problem of people not being satisfied in marriage as two virgins coming together, you may find out that due to them being that way, some people who choose to be virgins are prude.
Yeah.
So you may get some people who are virgins who get married who chose not to even kiss until marriage. So I really don't believe they may have watched porn
Well, that's
because that may have helped them.
No, I'm not saying
in
I'm
that
not saying
area.
that's for everybody, but I'm saying
Not
sometimes.
saying you should watch porn to
no,
help you as a
absolutely
virgin,
not.
but
Because-
I feel like time out. You may see it as wrong, but there needs. If no one can explain it to you because they're afraid to talk about it, let that baby sit down and watch a video before they take their honeymoon trip. Because
Watch a video. That's
something
porn.
you watch a video at school
Listen to me.
about sex ed.
Listen-
Baby, come here.
Gabe,
Let me
I'm
pop
just
this
saying-
DVD in.
Gabe,
Boy,
But
this
I'm
is one of my
saying
favorite
What
scenes.
you don't
what is
want to
happening?
read Song of
Gabe,
Solomon.
hold
Something.
on.
No.
Explain
Gabe,
it to them, but
Gabe,
you can't send two virgins on their
Gabe,
honeymoon
Gabe, put
and
the-
expect for them just to
Gabe.
figure it out.
No.
The
Gabe,
first 2
put the
days are
camera
gonna be
on me.
figuring out where does it go.
Gabe, put the camera on me.
It
Y'all
don't
better-
take a rocket
Gabe, put the
scientist.
For
camera.
some people, it
Gabe,
obviously do.
No.
Keep
you
talking
hear
about
me?
saying sex is
Gabe, right now,
trash.
Gabe, you're behind the computer. You put the camera on me right now. Don't you dare go watch no video before you go home. And I never.
I'm not. Oh
I never tend to disagree with Marcus, but don't you dare.
You just told the people to go
Don't-
watch a video.
No, I'm talking about if
Pastors are losing their jobs on this episode.
Gosh.
Thank you.
I'm saying if the church can't explain it. Y'all act like y'all ain't watch sex ed videos at school.
No, but
or
no,
like people
let
didn't
Bill not do it.
Your
It
parents
was-
didn't show you a book talking about here's the words and the bees.
Sex
But
ed
but
was
here's the
not
problem.
in middle school. Sex
here-
ed was
but
not a man and a
here's-
woman getting together. Sex ed was
I'm not talking
understanding
about
your
two people actually having
sexuality.
sex on the
No,
video. I'm
but the
talking about explaining it, not like actually watching it. Hold on here.
But here's the problem. The
Let's
problem
break that
is,
down. I'm not telling them to, no, y'all ain't gonna get me canceled.
no.
I'm not saying
It's-
go
you
watch
get
some-
yourself canceled.
I'm not
It's not
saying
us.
watch someone else have sex. I'm saying if someone doesn't want to do the sex ed conversation, if you don't feel comfortable saying, because there's some people who are saved who don't even feel comfortable, and y'all can cancel me saying penis and vagina. All
That's
these
true.
crazy cool words that people come up with for it. Say it what it is. It is penis and vagina. Y'all can cancel me. See me outside. If you don't feel comfortable,
Those are the scientific words.
it's the scientific words.
But why
If-
does everybody have to see you outside?
I don't know. He's really violent on these episodes.
But
I don't know what's happening,
But
guys.
there are some people who are uncomfortable even speaking on it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
uncomfortable, load up a video, load up a podcast.
Right.
Let someone teach these young people, because if you don't teach them, they're going to learn it from someone else.
No, right. And I agree. The problem is the timing of your statement came after we were talking about pornography.
Oh,
So you was like, go watch a video. We're like, whoa.
I saw it.
Yeah, so but I think what I was saying was that miscommunication comes from people having high expectations
Yeah.
based upon something that is not real.
Because if you expect for your partner to go for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Let that go. Let that go. If you expect to see a replica of what you watched, we'll leave that right there.
Man,
If you expect to
we are
experience,
being real, yo.
so am I. If you expect to experience a replica of what you watched,
Bruh.
let's leave that. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Then
Hold
I feel like those expectations are too high though.
Sometimes it's not even what you watch. You get into romance novels.
Right.
I don't know
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
about
Zane
that.
would get
Bruh.
crazy.
I've met many people who done read some books and got their
Listen,
mind messed up
hold
more
up,
than
hold
watching
up,
some movies.
Hold on, listen. All my young girls who know about Fly Girl, and that's all I'm gonna say.
I don't want to know.
Oh no, I grew up in the
It's
Zane era.
Zane.
Yeah,
It's
Zane,
Zane.
yeah.
Fly Girl. Omar Tyree. Look, Zane. Omar Tyree. That's all you have to say. But I was in middle school
Yeah.
reading that stuff.
Yikes.
No, seriously.
It's real though.
It's real. So when you have those type of expectations, that is what people try to emulate in real life, and it's not real. It's someone's fantasy that they pinned down, or somebody's fantasy that they made into a movie. And so even if you are not indulging in pornography, because we do not endorse that, but
No.
just enough.
Look at me.
It's
No.
enough from the novels. It's enough from the movies that we watch, and so you have these unrealistic expectations. And so if we as the church begin to teach the purpose
Yeah.
of sex
Right.
and the purpose of why it's intended to have in marriage,
In marriage.
Yeah.
Right. Correct.
I think we would have a lot more healthy marriages.
Yes.
For one, we would have a lot more educated people, about why God designed things the way he did.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to understand that, because sex is not just for childbearing. sex is not just for that purpose.
You keep doing it, you will.
Well, no, because there's biblical accounts of women being barren. So that is not the intent of sex.
It's not the sole intent.
No.
That's
how
not
it happens, but it's not the sole
right.
intent.
That's not the sole intent.
But let's be honest. Let's be real here. Let people know.
Oh, I think they know that.
You gotta make sure.
Why do you sound like somebody's grandfather fixing the carburetor? Let people know that. Fix the carburetor. Go give me the written line.
Fix the carburetor.
But I agree that it does need to be talked about. So to get back to your original conversation, original question, excuse me, I think that if it's communicated that, hey, I don't like when you do this and I don't like when you do that.
Yeah.
I think that particular marriage, notice we did not say relationship.
Yeah,
that particular
clear.
we didn't say relationship. That particular marriage, because there are a lot of people. Is there a reason why you're looking specifically at the camera? You want to talk about it, Gabe? You good? Because Gabe was like, I don't know. Because there are a lot of people.
Communication is key.
No, seriously.
No matter what.
There's a lot of people, even in millennials, and it's not just them. There's a lot of people out here who feel like they need to test the waters.
I was about to say
before they put the boat in the ocean.
Sex in a relationship is not a test drive situation.
Wait. Before they what?
Put the boat in the ocean.
Put their boat in the ocean. Drop your anchor.
Yeah.
Anchors.
So I just feel like that is not a reason. It's not a reason to, like people like test the waters. Like, I just want to be sure.
That is not an excuse absence.
It is not an excuse.
Because once you get married, that's not going to be the sole basis of what your marriage is about. And that's what I'm saying. You're going to have this rude awakening if you decide to test the waters. It's great. And then after marriage, it's still crap. Because that is what you based your relationship off of.
And this is coming from 4 people who are real enough to say.
We shacked up.
We didn't wait.
Look.
We didn't wait. So,
no. No.
Oh, you waited?
Nope.
Wait.
Mama
said you was a virgin.
I mean, yep.
Protect
You
my
ain't gonna do a
eyes
whole
from-
nother version that only his mom can see.
Protecting my eyes from the corona.
Are you a virgin? Yes.
This video's going private.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but no, I feel like I don't understand. Like even as a pastor or even as a preacher, I've seen in singles conferences, marriage conferences where sex comes up and the whole room just locks up.
It's
gets
crazy.
tense.
Yes.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
for sure.
But I think it also is and we get into the generation conversation because we are young adults. I do believe that our generation is a little more open to discuss it than previous generations.
Absolutely.
But y'all can kill me for this. I feel like our generation doesn't deal with the conversation of, is it being practiced the right way? We all know as our generation what's right and what's wrong. Our generation's conversation is questions such as this. Is it okay to bring someone else into my bedroom with my spouse? Is it okay?
You talking about threesomes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They are happening in the church.
That's
They are.
Wow,
threesomes,
that's a
toys,
conversation.
all that kind of stuff. Seriously,
Orgies.
it's no for real. It's
Yes.
it's happening at these conventions.
As long as
convocations.
everybody's married.
No, for real.
Oh, yeah, it's real.
No, for real, at these conventions,
Swingers
at these
are happening in church.
convocations, conferences, revivals. I said what I
Okay.
said. Yeah, it's happening. Like
Let's talk about it. What's going on? What's happening? I haven't heard of this.
It's the hush hush.
no, for real.
I didn't know
yeah.
that's
Oh,
real
Oh yeah,
prevalent.
no. Like at the and I don't.
It's
want,
been raging since the 60s.
I don't want to dumb it down to a specific type of
Yes.
people. I can only speak from where I come from. Like the Pentecostals and Apostolics. Oh yeah, no, they're bumping and humping. I don't care what
Oh
I said. What I
my
said. No, for real.
God.
They're having church, and when church is over, they're slipping their room keys to people. No, for real, it's a thing.
Wow.
It is.
And no, like it's like okay, so when is
It's
it going to be? When is it going to be
Check out
checked?
2019 with all the
Yeah,
all the
that's-
outings that happened.
it's a lot of
No,
stuff.
for real.
And
It's
I feel like
ministers.
now it's more prevalent because social media and what happened in the past. And people say, all these millennials and these young people are wild. Y'all was doing the same thing, but
Yeah.
no one could document it.
Yep.
If
And
some
that-
things could have
it's-
came out
it's-
from back
it is
then,
so true because technology is not what it was back then. They were good and they were covered. And so the only way
They would just go to another city.
When I leave
Thank
this
you.
room, I leave this room, and that's it.
Yeah.
When I go back home, I'm good. There's no trail. There's no technological trail because now that's what it is.
This right here
Your location is going to give you up.
will ruin
If you forget to turn your location off.
Which, by the way, I don't condone that. The whole I'm gonna share my location with you. What's up with these trust issues?
I feel like that's just nice.
It's safety. I do it because
I would
it's
love it
safety
because when she
protocols.
traveling somewhere and like her phone died, I need to make sure she's straight.
Okay, I mean, I guess
Now,
that's-
now let's get into the
that's
trust.
reasonable,
Now,
I guess.
if it's done for trust concerns of you're not where you said you were, it's like I said I was going to the grocery store. I stopped to get gas. Why aren't you where you said you? Like that's
exactly what I'm talking
That's
about.
another
Like, that's
conversation.
happening.
That's
But then we
that's
get in the
weird
conversation
to me.
of why is that trust
Yeah,
situation
no, it
like
starts
that?
getting weird. It was like you was 8 minutes from here 15 minutes ago. Okay, come on,
It's
stop.
technology.
Yeah, so I think
It
because
glitches.
because
It
technology
could have took 30
was
minutes to get milk. You don't know. I had to go find a cow.
technology was what it was. Like
You had to find a cow, all right.
I've
Oh dear.
I've heard stories of men who would leave their family and go to the next town
Yes, come on.
and start a whole nother family.
Pastors would do it.
Pastors.
nother family.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Gabe, a
because
whole nother family,
literally be
bro.
11 minutes up the street.
And they
left
wouldn't
their
even know
wife.
each other.
And they would never know because of technology.
This is
Yep.
happening in the church.
I'm
Bro,
telling you.
it's happening now.
I'm telling you. It's so it's crazy. And so people are afraid to talk about sex. I've never understood why. It
That's
doesn't make
why
any
you
sense.
just said it.
But my thing is it needs to be talked about.
You may find out half of your youth board is the child of the pastor.
Oh man.
Let's be real.
You gotta go.
Is it real though?
You have to leave.
But is it real?
You're not welcome here.
You see it all the time. Pastors won't preach on what they're struggling with themselves. Just think about it. Most of the pastors who have fell in scandal, if you look at their, oh my God, if you look at the record of what most pastors fell from, you'll see
I'm just
the
gonna look at
topics
the
that were
camera.
not discussed were what they succumbed to. So there's a lot of people who don't want to be real about what they went through in the past, even if they've been delivered from it. Some people don't like opening up the wound because they're afraid they're going to fall back into
Oh,
it.
they opening up all right.
Okay.
I don't. My thing is, I've
You
never,
can't say that and keep moving.
I won't stop saying it. Sex needs to be talked about. I understand, and this is fine. I understand that yes, sex feels good if it's done right.
Glory to God.
Yes, that you probably shouldn't praise him.
You
for that.
shouldn't say that.
You shouldn't praise him for that.
You're a virgin.
Shouldn't give him go. Yeah,
No, he's not.
Mama mad.
Mama said. Mama said.
Yes, it feels good, but there ought to be
That it
there ought to
does.
be a desire in you to say, okay, you know what? I don't necessarily want to. I guess participate in that. And I'll tell you why. As far as like for those of you who watch pornography, now I may get in trouble. I say be careful with that because you're never really satisfied.
No.
You are never satisfied. People who are addicted to pornography, it can be years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not to really bring up nobody, but the guy who wrote Healer. Mike.
Yeah.
It
From
was
Flame
it
Shakers,
was
yeah.
a lie because he had a 15-year pornography addiction.
Yeah.
Right.
He said he had a
he had cancer. He said
illness
he
that he couldn't
said he was
heal.
dying from cancer.
Yeah,
And the truth is, he really had a pornography addiction.
but he was trying to cover it.
There are people out here because that is a.
Kirk Franklin even came clean
He
about
showed,
his
he,
pornography.
right. He had it
addiction.
when his probably came together when he fell down in the orchestra pit. That's not the point. Point is,
Look at me. I'm the captain now. I'm commandeering this episode.
it's okay. It's fine. So it's my thing is there are people who do it. Now I have had conversation with people. And I ask them, why do you watch pornography? And this is probably going to be tough for some of y'all watching. And, there's some people who watch it, think it's funny. There's some people who watch it and they masturbate. And I'm like, well, why do you watch pornography? There are some people who watch it because it takes the guilt-free away from actually having sex with somebody.
As much as you think.
Right,
It
but I said
doesn't.
that self-pleasure, and what you don't understand is you're making yourself a god in that moment. You're pleasing yourself.
Can you explain that? Guilt from what? What
Having
do you mean?
actually penetration.
actually having sex.
Was it
Like
with
people
another
who
person?
from the sin of
actually.
No, from that
but you're
guilt of
still
saying
being
right, from the guilt of saying I had sex with somebody. So instead, you sit at the house and you watch pornography.
It's like the people who say they're not having sex because they just have oral sex. It's still sex.
I just
Okay.
for the people at home.
We're gonna have
I
to do a
want to make
part
sure
two.
we clarify all
We're
that.
gonna have to do a part 2.
I don't have any more tea. It's fine.
Wait.
Okay.
But when you, Jesus,
It's still sex.
Okay.
Using your fingers is, as we getting real in this, is still having sexual intercourse.
oh, see, this is why. Okay,
It's
never mind.
real. I mean,
no,
for real.
no, it's real. It's
Because
real.
so
I
much
was
stuff,
just,
so much stuff happened on youth trips in the past.
you know, some of those details. I was about to get too detailed.
It's real.
Oh my gosh.
All of it.
Dry humping, it will lead.
It'll get you in trouble.
It's still lusting.
Yeah.
If you get bought to the big O,
The what?
the big O.
Oh, okay. Patience, go with your comment. We're gonna go with patience. We're gonna go with patience. Hey, Marcus, can you mute your mic from control? Go ahead, patience. What's
What to say?
no?
Jesus.
So while patience gathers herself, it's the same thing with using toys. Like I've seen people talk about it. Like, you know, like there have been like preachers, and there was this one preacher, I forgot his name. He was saying that even that you don't understand is bad because it is molded after somebody.
Is
And
it?
I'm like, wow. Like if you think about that,
I don't need a mold to. Never mind.
whose side? Patience. We were on the same side for that. We were on the same side. The point is, you have to be careful
I'm
with.
just being
You have
serious.
to be careful with all of that. The whole sex conversation. It is very, very. It's. I don't say it's dangerous. It's just touchy.
It's
But-
levels.
But it's right. It's an extended conversation.
Yeah.
Because there are people who think this conversation doesn't apply to them because they don't have sex, but they masturbate. No, this conversation applies
It
to
still
you
applies.
too.
What are the limits in experimentation while you're married?
Such as,
I don't know. Are there limits like toys or whatever?
the marital bed is on.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
okay.
But that don't mean bring no extra partners in.
Okay, so
And
threesomes
so
are off
when
the
you,
table.
Threesomes are absolutely off
and
the
so when you
table.
talk about toys, some people view toys as bringing in another partner.
Correct.
in.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have
Why?
to be careful.
Like he said, some people view it as another anatomy.
Yes.
Some people view it as a source of comparison, or also it could cause issues because some women, well, I'll say more prevalent with men. Men will try to compete with the toy because I'm just gonna be real. Look at me. Men don't got no batteries.
That's
The toy
that's why
won't
you're my
stop.
brother.
I don't
but
seriously.
we
vibrate.
are
Yeah,
going
seriously.
to
And so
complete.
I don't vibrate? What are you
You
doing?
can if you shake fast enough.
What are you shut up. Oh man, both of you are making me so mad. I'm getting so mad. He's like, I don't vibrate. But he's shaking his head while I do it. I don't do this.
Let's be clear.
Right. So but my thing is, I'm old school, straight up. If it can't get done with me and only me, we ain't gonna do it. Hey, no, for real. Because like you said, that becomes a problem because now if the man's not home, she don't need you no more if she has a toy.
Did she ever?
So, right, see, that's the problem. No, it creates issues. So that really creates a problem. So there are some people who really teach like, no, you shouldn't bring that into the bedroom.
Yeah.
Other people, you're creating
Here's a question.
time. What's up?
If you're married
Uh-huh.
and let's say you can't satisfy your partner,
Mhm.
what can you do?
Learn.
Because fornication is still a sin.
That's communication.
It's all in communication.
But I'm saying, but beyond that, I mean, let's say you communicate, but like I said, you got 5 pumps and that's it.
I would say, yeah, ask the question that
Yeah, you gotta
wanna
ask the
'cause you're
right
really, You're
question.
really not
No,
asking
that's
the question.
it. Like,
You sure? Because we know Gabe.
You got like 5 questions in one.
No, for real.
no,
like,
no, that's
So
it.
it'll be
Like,
5 minutes in the
I
episode.
don't have a
like,
specific
now
question.
I'm done.
It's like,
Are you saying if you communicate that you're not satisfied and they don't change?
no. I'm saying the communication doesn't matter. It only lasts for 2 seconds because that's how he's built, or
Wasn't
whatever.
that everybody though?
Okay, this is my
I mean,
thing. This is my
Just being
and
real.
This
Go
is
If you're talking about experience, if you're talking about 2 people starting from scratch, you gotta work. It's like starting a video game. I can't get to the master level yet. I gotta work my way there.
you gotta work about. Okay,
Just go. I can't.
there are other.
Wait for me.
Y'all
Okay,
brought
this
me to
is
this
and-
conversation.
And this goes back to your question before that. What can you do as far as, you know, a married couple in the bedroom. To me, there are other ways to get to the ultimate goal besides penetration. And you have to understand that's why I say communication is important, because
Talking about foreplay?
Absolutely.
foreplay,
Okay.
you know,
You have
different
to.
positions, everything is different for each person. So unless you're communicating, unless you're learning your partner, learning your spouse, you will go into it resenting sex.
Let me tag me in after you're done.
You have to learn your partner, and you have to have open communication. Foreplay is there. I'm not dealing with it. Foreplay is good, but you have to explore. You have to be open to exploring. Now, if you're married and you get into a marriage and you have a partner who is not willing to explore, you know, who's not open, look, you're gonna have to go to your war room, because it's real.
It's honest God truth.
You're gonna have to go to your war room, because that can be a basis where people feel like it's okay to divorce.
Or cheat.
And then,
Yeah.
or cheat, yes, and or cheat, and people will cheat before they divorce if it's something like sex.
But that's a problem with the church, because sometimes divorce is ruled at a higher level in sin than fornication and cheating. It's like, girl, if you can't do it for them, let them go get it somewhere else, but you stay married, which is a problem when the conversation should be communicating what is the problem.
Y'all know
Why?
there are sex therapists.
But we
Yeah.
get back
I'm
into
just-
church doesn't believe sometimes in therapy. But tag me in. I'm ready.
Okay, hold up. No. Because there is always a way. And a lot of times, if a woman is not satisfied, first of all, like you said, I don't want to tell him because it's going to shatter his ego.
Right.
Yeah.
Get into therapy. Even if you don't go to a sex therapist, because that's obvious. If you go to a therapist, it's gonna come out some way, but it's a safer space. I'm just saying. Look,
Can I get tagged?
go.
Finally. All right. 2 points. Number one, and this is for the people who are not always saved or the people who found themselves in a sinful way.
Us.
All of us.
Hello.
Hey.
One of the problems you may be struggling with if you're married and you're seeing sex is not working right for your marriage, what you did for other people may not work for your current spouse or your current partner.
Very good.
Because a lot of people believe, well, it worked for 8 other women
Right, I was good.
or 8 other
I was good
men.
with that. Yeah, very
it
good.
should work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, that must mean that something's wrong with you.
That's good.
And that's not the problem.
Right.
You
Gotta
need to
break
know
them
the
soul ties.
needs.
Yep.
That's a big thing. And you also need to know the needs of what it's going to take for your spouse. Number 2. Yeah, we're going to get into the soul tie conversation. The other thing, you got that face. All right, let's dive into soul ties first before I go anywhere else. Soul ties.
Question?
Yeah, what's a soul tie?
Jesus.
Well, you have to understand that as far as a soul tie, when you talk about soul ties, it's talking about giving somebody entrance into what controls your thinking, what controls how your
You're
body,
going to win like I had to.
what controls how your body reacts. You're giving them entrance to your soul, and people assume that soul ties start with sex.
Nope.
When the truth is, soul ties actually start with conversation. How you converse with the person, you give them entrance to your soul. How you think, what makes you tick, what you like, what you don't like, what you're into. That's why when they talked about sexting, you got to be careful. That's what there are certain people. Be honest with yourself that there are certain people you cannot text after a certain time.
Absolutely.
There are certain things you cannot respond to. You should not respond to the eye emoji at 2:00 in the morning.
Or
Certain
you
places
shouldn't
you
even
should
be
not be.
texting.
Yeah, WYD at midnight. What are you doing? I'm sleep. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so that soul tie, you're giving somebody entrance into how you function.
And a level of influence.
Right. And so when there are a lot of people who have soul ties with people, and if you don't get rid of that, you don't understand that, and you're constantly processing on these people. Now, this is very, 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 very touchy, and I'm okay with it. That's why there's a lot of people who still have soul ties who are bothered when somebody you used to have sex with has sex with somebody you know. I know you're not going to like me, because there are still people with soul ties. Why do you have control Oh man, I pray my church still show up. Why do you have control over who somebody is having sexual connections with? It might be wrong and you might have your view, but if you are no longer tied to that person,
Yeah.
how do you have a level of influence?
Because people believe that distance equates to separation. Just because I haven't talked to you doesn't mean that I'm not attached to you.
I like this. Add to it.
Well, because you have all of that influence,
Right.
and it gets deeper, soul ties do get deeper with sexual intimacy and sexual intercourse.
Yeah.
So when you get married and you're thinking what worked for him or what worked for her,
Or what they did for you.
is going to work in my marriage, you're carrying all of that into your marriage. So you're already starting out like this in the bedroom.
Yeah. Yep.
So you have to be sure it's very, very important to communicate and also cut those soul ties.
Yeah.
It takes work. It takes deliverance. It takes the blood of Jesus to do that. And so we don't have enough conversation in the church about these topics.
Right.
Especially when people are dating, because when people are dating, it's just like, oh, you're dating, don't have sex. Set your boundaries and don't cross them.
Ooh.
That's the extent, of dating in the church, but you don't get any further than that.
Can I say this? And I do believe why a lot of marriages in church fail is because a lot of people rush through the courting and dating phase because they want to get to the
have
sex.
sex.
Not to have sex, but to have clean sex.
A license to drive, whatever that means. Seriously, that's what it says.
It's real. A lot of people rush into, and you see a lot of people rush children and teenagers into marriage because they don't want them to deal with the stain that comes from premarital sex being found out by other people in church, or a baby that comes out of wedlock. You see parents forcing people into relationships and into marriages because of fear from perception, instead of really asking the question of, does this work with this? Are they even equally yoked?
Right.
Does this make sense on paper and make sense spiritually? But because of your fear of what the deacons, the elders, your girls, the mothers of the church, what they think, you're willing to put your child in a uncomfortable decision, in an uncomfortable relationship, because you're worried about you.
Right, because they tag where Paul says it is better for you to marry than to burn with passion. So I understand that. That's how people try to cover up. Well, if you want to have sex, you need to get married. It's really more than
The relationship is more than sex.
Right. I'll say this though. Conversation's not over. Catch us next week as we continue this conversation with sex. We appreciate you guys for joining us for this episode. If you're watching by YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Go to the IG page and follow us. But this has definitely got to be another conversation.
Absolutely.
We're not done talking about this. Send in your comments.
Make sure you come back. It's getting juicy, baby.
That's not the right way to end it, Gabe. It's not the right way.
We're going to catch y'all next week. We out of here.
Good.